Well, greetings everyone. This roof is one that I put on 20 years ago using the conventional bottom-up method. Now it's time for replacement, and I plan to try the top-down method, which I've never done before. I thought I would share my experience and cover what I found to be good and not so good about the top-down method. I've put on a couple roofs before, but I'm not proficient at all. So if there are DIY types out there with limited experience thinking about this technique, keep watching. After all, I'm a senior citizen with not much experience, so if I can do it, you can do it. I started by deciding how far down from the top I wanted to go on the first band. The first go, I went down 8 feet, which is 2 passes with the underlayment. After doing this one time, I decided that one pass worked out better. I stripped shingles down to a predetermined row so that the underlayment would lap the tail of the old shingles. This keeps it weather tight between sessions. After pulling old nails, there were a few nail pops in the sheeting, so I screwed the sheeting down all over and stapled on synthetic underlayment. Staples generally were good enough since it gets covered right away. A horizontal chalk line started the first row, and in my case of a hip roof, I added a vertical line to establish the offsets. The bottom row was positioned to just overlap the old shingles to keep it rain tight. The manufacturer's instructions assume a gable roof with a straight edge to start rows from. In my case, I began from a vertical line. I began the first row on the vertical line, the second row 6 inches to the left, the third row 11 inches to the left, the fourth row 11 inches to the right, the fifth 6 inches to the right, and the sixth back on the line, and so on. The first row went down without nails, or maybe just a tack at the top edge if they wanted to slide around. The second row and each row after that got nailed on according to the peggage instructions. At this point I ran into my first problem. The temperature was in the mid-90s and the seal down strips were so aggressive they wanted to stick before I could finish the job. I used strips of release film saved from ice and water shield, with the release side next to the sealant and between the first 2 rows. An extra pair of hands came in useful here. I also tried a food wrap, which worked okay too. From the second row up, it went on as the usual method. The next lift below was a repeat until it got to the row where the rows met. The last row slid under the bottom row of the upper band. Therefore, the reason for not nailing the start row in the first place. The loose shingle got lifted up to nail the row above, and the next row got lifted to nail the row that had been left loose. I didn't find this lifting to be any problem. Someone might notice my Harbor Freight nailer. It was a good price, it was about $76 with a coupon, and it worked just fine. At the bottom row, I put on the ice and water shield and then underlayment. The starter shingles were put on as usual practice. At one point, severe storms were forecast, so I put on strips of material that just lapped over the bottom row, with the screws just missing the new shingles. This first row is a little vulnerable to wind since it's not nailed. To finish out the hip, I folded the first shingle to hide raw edges. The first time I tried folding, the shingle cracked. The second time I put a few minutes in a 200-degree oven and got them soft enough to bend without cracks. I doubled up the hip shingles with about a 3/8 offset. Well, that about wraps it up. To sum up, on the positive side, this top-down method nearly eliminates all walking on the new work, which is especially useful in warm days if you're doing your own work and want it to last as long as possible. Secondly, toe boards can be screwed directly to the deck since they're on the old work, and it keeps the roof weather tight if the project goes over many days. On the negative side, the biggest thing I found was all the measuring required. One has to get the rows started accurately, or the exposure will not be consistent when the lifts meet. Seam offsets also need to be kept in mind so that the gaps don't line up when the rows come together. Lifting up these shingles might not work if the weather was cold. And if it's hot enough, there's some kind of a release film needed between the first two rows. That's an extra step. I didn't have a valley, but if a person was replacing a metal valley, that could be a little bit of a problem. I thought this method worked out just fine, and I would do it again, especially if I didn't have much help and I was doing my own roof. That's it. Thank you. Bye.